America's mayor, Mr. Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Giuliani, it's an honor to talk to you, sir. How are you?
Oh, it's an honor to talk to you, too, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity. I'm fine. I'm doing very well.
Good. The reason we're talking to you, as if we needed one, is you were fired from your job as a radio show host on WABC. Why were you fired, sir?
Well, I was fired, or I refused to work under those conditions. I can't tell you what the actual final disposition was because he never told me. I just got an email saying I couldn't go on. Well, here was the story. The day before I was fired, I received a letter from the CEO of the company, John Catsimatidis, who was also a friend for 30 or 35 years, I might add. And the first sentence of the letter tells the whole story. It says, "This is to inform you, or to remind you, that you are prohibited from having any conversations about the 2020 elections on WABC radio or as an agent of WABC radio," which could, in fact, include, let's say, right now when I'm talking to you, right, as an agent of WABC radio. Now, this was very, very puzzling because I've been talking about the problems with the election since the day they emerged, because I've had a radio show continuously since before the election. And so when I was representing President Trump as his lead counsel in those election cases, I was on WABC every day between 3 and 4. Maybe I'd miss a day or two when I was in court, but pretty much average 4 days a week. And the moment the issue arose, I discussed it. I discussed it in real time. Then when it was over, I did a piece, a rather significant one, on 2,000 Mules, which is, of course, discussing the 2020 election very critically. I've had Christina Bobb on my show several times, who, of course, wrote a book, and it's exclusively about the 2020 election, really. Steve Bannon, oh, my goodness. You know, I guess the point is I've had guests on that have made the point, and I do it myself.
This isn't out of nowhere.
Well, it's not really out of nowhere.
No, I mean, like I should say you're talking.
It wasn't a surprise. It was a surprise to me, but I had seen an article about a week before that there was a dispute with regard to the Dominion case between Newsmax and WABC, and Newsmax wanted to subpoena all of John Catsimatidis' records of his communications with the president of Dominion, a guy named Poulos, because Newsmax maintains that he got some kind of special deal in being left out of the lawsuit because his station, along with others, they commented on Dominion. And he is fighting that subpoena. And part of the argument of Newsmax is that I continuously talk about the 2020 elections. Now, I don't talk about Dominion because I'm in litigation with them, but I do talk about everything else. And I think he wants to escape that. For some reason, he doesn't want us to know what those secret discussions with Dominion were. And second, the second part of the letter, which referred to the $145 million judgment, seemed to have been written or copied from Biden's lawyers. And I had a suspicion of that immediately because it told me I couldn't talk about my case involving the $145 million judgment. That also I have talked about almost every day from the time it happened, and strangely been questioned about it by other ABC hosts. most of whom, if not all, feel that it's a very unjust. It's a case very similar to the case that the president is going through right now. I never got a chance to testify. I never had a trial. She decided my liability based on failure of discovery. When I wanted to testify on damages to explain there were no damages, I was told if I told the same story, she'd hold me in contempt, which meant she was going to put me in jail. This is the judge who called in all the judges in the District of Columbia, she's the chief judge, and told them they weren't giving harsh enough sentences. So, I mean, she's, in my view, as a lawyer, whether I'm the defendant or a lawyer practicing it, this is a bloodthirsty judge for Trump people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mr. Giuliani, let me back it up here a second. I want to go back a ways and then bring it back around here because it's all connected. You've gone up against some very difficult things, some large hurdles to say the least. We were talking to Dr. Gorka yesterday, and I know you and him talked the other day as well. And he said, "This is the man." I can't do a good Gorka accent yet, not all the time, not in full sentences. I can do a couple of words,
it
but not
make them
full.
sound smarter, though, right?
Absolutely, and he knows it, and he uses it to an advantage. But he doesn't need it, but he uses it. He said, "This is a man who's brought down mafia bosses." And I wasn't paying attention to the world when you were doing that, when you did that. But what lessons did you learn? What did you have to go up against? What institutional, I don't want to say rot or just forces did you have to fight against in order for you to be the first person to really do that? And then I want to talk about maybe what those, what similarities and lessons we can all learn from that today. But take us back to those days.
Well, I have to. I got tremendous criticism from a lot of people. The case that really generated the most criticism is when I brought a racketeering case against the Teamsters Union based on their being controlled by the mafia. And it asked for the removal of the entire board and replacement with an outside board supervised by the court. And at the time, they supported my president, Ronald Reagan. I worked for the president for 8 years. And I got about 135 members of Congress who like to suck up to the Teamsters, wrote a letter to Ronald Reagan saying I should be fired for interfering in union activities.
Wow. And
all of the presidential candidates in 1987, 88 thought that I should be fired, including I think this was before Joe Biden flamed out as a pathological liar during that election here. But I think he was one of them that thought I should be removed.
So what'd you do?
Well, I didn't leave. And a day later, Vice President Bush was the only presidential candidate to support me. He said, Rudy Giuliani is just finishing the work begun by Robert Kennedy, and no one attacked Robert Kennedy when he did it. And it was the first time I really had seen that difference, Robert Kennedy, rightly, whether you agree with him other things or not, became quite a hero for going after the mafia, and particularly Jimmy Hoffa. And here I am bringing it to a conclusion and willing to say I'm going to prove it in court, which I did. You would think I'd be given the same heroic status, but I was destroying the union movement. I was really saving the union movement. So
yeah, that's right.
I mean, I knew when I did it that I was going to get banged because the Republicans didn't want to lose the support and the Democrats wanted to take it back. Now, the Teamsters have been really straightened out now, and the mafia and the Teamsters have no relationship at all anymore. That also allowed us to save Las Vegas because it was through the Central States Pension Fund that the mafia used laundered money to control all those casinos. So it was a very, very significant case.
So what's the life lesson you learned?
The life lesson I learned is you set your goals based on what's right, what you believe is the right thing to do. If you're in a position like a prosecutor or a government position, You do the best you can to be fair and to make the right decision, and then you stick with it. And when people unjustly criticize you, you just stand there and you just keep going. And what's the worst? They're going to kill you? I mean, I'd rather die standing up for a principle than being a little weasel. And that's the way I was brought up. I mean, I've been threatened with death by, I think, 5 or 6 different organizations that actually are pretty skillful at it. The Mafia, of course, the FARC, the Colombian drug cartels, 3 fatwas, and 2 attempts to kill me by Iranian terrorists. One in Albania and the other in Paris. So, look, I live my life that way, and I'm very spiritual, and I ask for guidance from Jesus. And if in that guidance he tells me I'm wrong, I'll switch. I mean, I've been wrong about things and apologized for them, but this is there's too much at stake. I mean, there's too much at stake here. It's too obvious. You really have to be deliberately not wanting to look at the facts, not to realize that we have in the White House a disaster, a complete disaster who is ruining our country. And I even worry about the remaining 5 months, because I think as he realizes he's going to go, who knows what permanent damage he'll try. He's already killed so many people. I mean, nobody in Ukraine had to be dead if he didn't get elected. They wouldn't have invaded under Trump. They didn't. It's so obvious. They invaded under Obama, they invaded under Biden, and they invaded under Bush. Who's the only other president in that sequence? Trump. They didn't go near invading. So all those hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine would be alive if we didn't elect him, and I don't think we elected him.